Good. How are you doing?
Good. How's your mood?
My mood. I would say my mood is generally positive, though could be a little better. I've been dealing with this like poison ivy that I got a few weeks ago. I didn't realize it was poison ivy until I went to the doctor today. At the advisement of my wife, just to get some answers on, what it would be and a more effective treatment. I got this like topical cream that the doctor prescribed, but the medication that they want me to ingest, that hasn't been like covered by my insurance yet, and like apparently like the insurance network is down for like all the pharmacies for whatever reason, so I can't get it unless I pay out of pocket, and I didn't want to do that because it's a little expensive and I'm like in between paychecks right now, so got a bit of anxiety around that. That's affecting my mood, but I'm happy to be here with you and happy to do this podcast. So
I'm so sorry to hear about that. I can see how it would cause an anxious element in the mood, and I think that over time, it'll pass, but
right.
At the same time, at this moment, we'll make the best that we can out of it.
Absolutely, yes. And again, thank you for being here and welcome to the Evolved Podcast. This is an open forum on personal growth and cultivating a positive mindset. I'll share my experience and you'll share yours, and we'll have a conversation about that. So I know you are a writer in one of the many facets of your life. You're also a small business owner or former small business owner. And you're currently developing a book, and you're getting ready for publication, and it's released. So can you tell me a bit about that and like what your book is all about, what your practice is, all of that?
Yeah, thank you so much. It reminds me of a sprawling wildflower, how twisted and how untidy and all of the angles that one doesn't see when they begin a process of publishing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that entail? So in this chapter of my life, I began writing this manuscript about 3 years ago.
Right.
And this was on the brink of when COVID-19 happened. I had this really hard magnetization to write. And later on, as my first developmental editor told me, Richard Grosinger, you only have 7 crayons in your toolkit, so you need to start developing yourself. And he was right. When the original manuscript has actually little and everything to do with my current manuscript. But if it wasn't for Richard Grosinger, who is the curator of Sacred Planet Books, an imprint within Inner Traditions, my publishing house, he was the one that scouted me in the rough. And he saw the subtle resonance of my manuscript, and he believed in me. And I think that when someone believes in you, then the process can become a lot more expedited. But the initial belief is within you. It's identifying that pull, that magnetization, even if you don't know why. There's a the curiousness and self-inquiry is what got me to the point where I started to want to add more crayons in my artist kit, you know.
Yeah.
So the last year was 2020. What are we in? 2023.
2023 currently. Yeah.
Last year was 2022. It was a very. I was straddling two different worlds. So I was, as I mentioned, on the brink of COVID-19. I went back to my former pharmaceutical research company because of the uncertainty of what this coronavirus epidemic was going to be financially and personally. And while I was working there, I started on this manuscript. And then at the end of 2021, my grandmother, who I love very dearly, she's my father's mother, began her cycle of crossing over. And I had been with her for 6 years, kind of preparing. She is preparing me, I'm preparing her. We kind of doula each other because she was like a mother. She was a mother to me. And while she was crossing over, you know, throwing in a dynamic of, not to get political, but, you know, I was born in Kiev, Ukraine, and I have family there. But the day that she started to cross over was the day that Ukraine officially was involved in the war.
Wow.
And so the deep sense of rage and then the grief, covered with grief, and the mourning, and then the urgency to get this manuscript out because I was transitioning from my pharmaceutical company. I left it in pursuit of this book. And writing the book pitch was how I transmuted all of these emotions. My grandmother passed away on Women's Day, International Women's Day, March 8th. And then the book pitch was accepted a month later. So there was a lot of things, a lot of different worlds clashing into each other during that time. But chaos introduces a yield, some type of yield. But that was when I had to rewrite the book many, many times. And yeah, just the process of deciding to go into complete solitude is an entirely separate conversation. But that's what I did, was I trusted the path. I let a lot of things pause in my life. For example, I removed myself from social media and the virtual world to get focused. Dave and I took a 3-week trip to the West and explored the West, which is a wonderful way to introduce this new chapter in my life of writing this book. And then we started to garden. I started to transmute this emotional grief with my grandmother, with not really deciding not to have a social community, so no one to talk to, into these flowers and working with floriculture. So at the end of the year, I submitted my 8th version of the manuscript, which I can talk about a little bit about in the later. And the publisher was thrilled. He was really thrilled with it, and he wanted to invest more time and more energy, more resources, more opportunity to make it even better. So that's why I'm in this, fortunately, in this process where everything is being analyzed very carefully to reach a wider audience.
It's fantastic. And can you just give like a high-level overview of what the book is about? I know in the previous iteration, maybe still is, Dave told me it has something to do with DNA and like human genomes, things of that nature. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So my background in industry was I worked as a scientist, as a chemist in a contract research organization here in Richmond with pharmaceuticals. And in some of my experience, I've worked with DNA. And what I've come to acknowledge and to accept is that DNA is not just empirical matter. DNA is a diaphanous technology. And what we have concluded DNA in terms, the conventional understanding of DNA is quite limiting. DNA being the father and mother, the frequency and wavelength of what makes us who we are, actually makes us quite infinite. And that's a very that's something we can't really comprehend as a physical and spiritual being. If you asked a kid or any adult, what is God? How do you explain? How do you describe? Where do you even begin? Right? So to capture DNA as a frequency, I'm going to take out wavelength for a moment.
Okay.
Is what this book is about, and how we are able to use frequency as a tool, an element, and a celestial, let me think of the word, as a celestial tuner. We can evolve, we can decide to self-evolve into a new form of human.
Interesting.
So to give you a high level of what my book is about, I think that maybe isn't such a high level, but it's a deep level. And today I was talking with a person about their flowers in the garden, and I think this kind of resonates with what I want to say. She was very concerned that her area is polar, so one area is sunny on the patio and one area is shady. And she was very concerned about her flowers not ever going to be symmetrical. And I asked her this question. I said, you don't need to answer it, but do you want, what's more important to you, symmetry or resonance? So she didn't have an answer, which is good.
How would you differentiate the two?
In my experience, in my life experience, I've noticed that symmetry is a weighted matter for many. We strive for this, what we call perfection. We strive for things to look a certain way. We have ideals. We've created expectations. And while that is a marker to our success, to our building and development and evolution as a race, as a human race, it's also like the empirical story of science. It's also limited us. And with having some kind of balance in pulling away for a moment and not just questioning the status quo, but actually being constructive in how we, or in what we decide to focus our attention on, scientifically and spiritually and art, then we're able to recognize new dimensions. We can start to feel interdimensions. We get to experience them, whether they're in numbers or geometry or in sound in animals, in plants, one's perspective begins to not only strengthen but widen.
So.
And resonance, sorry.
Okay. So how would you say would be good practices for strengthening and widening one's perspective?
The first thing that I did, I can't really speak for other people,
Sure.
but I can speak for my own, is I didn't become, it wasn't that I was irritated, it was that I constantly seek my own evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And
Same.
I don't care. I care and I don't care about redefining norms,
Mm-hmm.
but I care about how I am able to contribute as an engaged participant of community, of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to use the word ultimately, legacy. So where do I begin? And I began, and it's a continual process
Mm-hmm.
of remaining fluid, not being so fixed, not being so static. I enjoy meeting different people. I enjoy picking up new hobbies. And for me, the lesson is enjoy, have fun,
Mm-hmm.
not get so rigid and how things have to be symmetrical. It comes back to symmetry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Polarization is also another type of subject I'm interested, because I see polar as being complementary, and that was the original meaning of the word that was
Mm-hmm.
introduced by Robert Finch in the 1950s. I became polar to wanting to learn. I've always loved being a student, and anyway. So what does that mean emotionally, energetically?
Right.
I'm an Aquarius, so gotta stay on track. So what does that mean energetically? For me, in my practice, it was about constant deconstruction and constant creativity and rest.
Yeah.
Very important, rest and respecting nature. And that's hard to do because sometimes nature is really ugly.
Sure. Especially human nature.
Yeah, human nature and the complexities of chaos. But there's a frequency there that we all have access to, and it's our psychism.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being tuned in and seeing, feeling the world. I'm not talking about this type of polarization of being happy or sad, mad or angry, but recognizing without any attachments. And I start to see and witness things before they happen. And I think that's a really fascinating part about being human, is accepting that this is part of every person's right and responsibility to evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it definitely can be if you make it fun, right? And like not be too rigid with it, like you spoke to. And it sounds like you're also speaking in terms of polarization, in terms of mindfulness and awareness, and really being present with, your emotions, as well as the people around you, the plants around you, animals as well, I'm sure. And I know you've really been cultivating that through your gardening practice that you do with your partner Dave, who I met you through initially. Though the first time we talked, it was because I reached out to you about your food truck business, Pulp Fiction, you were making like smoothies and like bowls, things of that nature, and then you grew that business to open up a coffee shop in Lakeside, but then you had to close it down due to the pandemic, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what prompted you to go back to your former job in the pharmaceutical industry, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Precise.
And we don't have to go into too much detail on that, but I definitely am interested to hear about that journey from, opening that business, from the food truck and, the community that you had through that experience.
Do you mean when I opened the food truck and how I built community, sustained it?
Through building the community of the food truck and then, launching the brick and mortar business and, let's just start there.
That was another chapter in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was 27 or 28
Mm-hmm.
when I began that food truck business. So I had two pivotal times in my life that I left the pharmaceutical industry, and that was the first one. It felt like undertaking an Olympic high jump without any knowledge or experience in running or jumping
Mm-hmm.
or any movement in that matter. So did I worked at that time. I worked about 7 years. I was a very, analytical, empirical, very follow procedures type of person. Again, that was where I was in that part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucked me dry. I was depressed. I wasn't happy. And then leading up to that decision of leaving was when my father, he had a random heart attack and he died in his sleep.
Sorry to hear
overnight. Yeah, thank you. It was devastating because we were soulmates, and I was very close with my father. I'm an only child as well, so he meant everything to me at the time, and still does. So when that happened, it completely it turned my world upside down. I started to reassess my entire life, and if I was living it to the happiest degree that he wanted to see me, and being honest with myself, I wasn't. So at the time, I was married for 7 years. I was also in a cult.
Really?
And it was a satanic cult as well.
Okay.
By satanic, it's not what people misperceive satanic to be. We didn't worship the devil or anything like that. Satanic is a framework of an organization where the principles are so centered towards the organization that one becomes heavily dependable emotionally, spiritually, and socially, and then and financially as well. And then if you leave, you get blacklisted or blackballed. No one's allowed to contact you. So that's what happened. My dad died, and then I decided I'm not happy with this job, with my relationship, and with this life that I thought that I was swimming in the lines, following a dream that wasn't mine. So I left it all, and I started over completely.
So did you get married when you were 20?
I was 21.
Okay. And did you get into the cult because of your husband?
Yes.
He was involved before you guys got married?
He was involved. At the time, they called it a religious church. And there, the people, not, they're normal people, but
Yeah.
the way that the organization is set up, we weren't allowed to do certain things. We weren't allowed to have like normal clothes. I wore turtlenecks. All of my skin was unrevealing. We tithed 20%. We had to follow certain holy days. Christmas and all of the other pagan holidays don't exist. No social media is allowed. So this kind of bureaucracy is also what I wasn't happy with in my corporate environment as well.
Right.
So what I decided to do, and where the turning point happened for me, is I signed up to do an Ironman in Australia. And the reason why I did an Ironman was to honor my father's life, because he had that heart attack 7 days after our first triathlon together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was an Olympic level, so it was a quarter of an Ironman. And why Australia? Because it was the only day in the following year where it marked his anniversary of his passing. So that's where I went.
Amazing.
And during that time, I had a physical transformation where I was very unhappy with myself. I was overweight. I was emotionally depressed. And I didn't really have anyone. My family isn't really around locally. My mother's relationship is complex. And so I decided that I was just going to start over as a 27-year-old. I made smoothies and juice to begin this journey of a healthy lifestyle, because the physical and carnal body is the passageway. It's a gateway into starting to feel again. So the smoothies was the beginning of the decision to create. It was the inspiration to begin there.
So did you start there because that was something that was working for you, that you wanted to share with other people?
It worked for me, but what I was hoping and aiming to achieve was not only the smoothies, but to begin a venture that would be community related. It would be quirky, open and inviting, and I wanted to bring a new air to Richmond. And at the time, it was just being a little bit outrageous. And that type of outrageous is something I've never experienced. It was daring of me, and I'm glad I did it. I've never experienced I've never confronted my inner sexual self. And of course, pole dancing is a pretty quick way to do so. But I came in with a type of humility that was very different from I think I came in with a very intentional type of humility of wanting just to explore who I am, because I didn't get a chance to do that in my early 20s. I was very vestal and trying to live my life very innocently, but also I just never really got a chance to explore who I am. And our sexuality is so it's a part of our vitality that each person has the right to understand about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did that, and I think it really helped with how I started to heal. I had the nutrition, I had the movement, and then I had the triathlon training while I was healing from grieving and, going through the divorce, and then transitioning away from the corporate world and just becoming a different, evolved, new version of myself at the time.
Yeah, I mean, such a crazy transition, from coming out of that relationship and that religious cult, and not to mention dealing with the loss of your father while training for an Ironman and completely changing your diet and your lifestyle. Like, it's incredible that you were able to do that. And then through it all, you finished the Ironman, I'm sure, and then you started a business that thrived for many years. I'm sure it had its ups and downs over the years, but I think what you did was very impressive, and I would love to hear how the Ironman went too.
I trained really hard for it because I didn't have any friends. So I put all of my energy, all of my grief, love, and hope went into training.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still working for corporate, so I had my 8-hour day, and then mornings were early, 4 to 5 wake-up calls to go swimming. Then, of course, did my work, and then after I did 2 to 3 hours of biking and then running, and then weekends I would do of course the long bricks, so 8 hours of cycling followed by 2 hours of running, and then by that I was stuffed by the end of those days. But when I had my rest and recoveries, I would be artistic, have my flow and movement as one of my outlets,
mm-hmm.
to keep my to find happiness and resolve emotionally and socially with other girls. And so the Ironman went really well. I didn't realize that I was going to finish in the top 10% of my age group. So I was a bronze in my age group, and from there it was like I could either continue go in the triathlon track and go professional if I wanted to go focus,
mm-hmm.
or I could come back as a different shaped piece to my life now. It just didn't fit anymore in the corporate environment. So that's why I chose to do the smoothie truck and take that energy and start to explore that gateway.
Did you continue to do triathlons?
I did. The following year, of course, I was building my business,
mm-hmm.
so I didn't have much time to train, but I would kind of just show up
yeah.
to some races. I did that for Lake Placid, New York, which is a very well sought terrain because, one, it's an Olympic venue where the Olympics took place, I think, in the 70s or
mm-hmm.
80s, I forget which year, but it's an epic terrain. The Adirondack Mountains are there. You've got Diamond Lake, where the swim is. So after the lake, no one ever tells you about the climb up the mountain.
Of course,
no one
right.
ever tells you that. So that's what happened. Of course, I didn't really train that much, but
mm-hmm.
that attitude that came with the quirkiness of my truck, I just kind of followed along with it. I made it fun, and
yeah.
it was, it was very fun. I really found delight in spending time with other athletes on the terrain, even though maybe I just wasn't as fast anymore, but supporting them was something that I enjoyed
uh-huh.
because I got to connect with them emotionally.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got the Keen Descent, which is 6 miles going down, and that was so scary because when I got to the top, it started to hail
Oh, shit.
and rain.
Okay.
And if you decide to, if you brake, if you try to slow down as you're going down, you're just still hitting 60 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh.
That's how
that's very steep. Yeah.
Steep it was, and there are signs for semis to slow down and to go into low gear.
Uh-huh.
So it's 6 miles of that, and then you've got Keene Valley that follows, and it's 40 degrees when you get down there.
Wow.
And at that point, you're just trying to survive.
Yeah, for real. Was that an Ironman as well? Okay. So have you only done Ironman triathlon races?
I've done 2 in my life. Since then, I've done more halves.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Half Ironmans, that is?
Yeah.
Nice.
I did one in North Carolina, Wilmington, in 2021, I think. But since then, I put the book first.
Yeah, of course.
So my life has drastically shifted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching Evolved Podcast. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors, True Nutrition. Use Evolved Podcast to get 5% off all True Nutrition supplements. I'm personally a fan of their soy isolate vegan protein powder, available in a variety of flavors and strengths from light to heavy. They also have non-vegan protein powders if that's not your thing. I recommend the cookies and cream flavor in heavy strength, and I add it to waffles, oatmeal, and protein shakes. They're delicious. Check out their wide range of supplements at affordable prices that are third-party tested and verified for content quality. They are able to provide such great prices because their supplements come direct from the manufacturer without any marketing gimmicks or fancy labels. Visit TrueNutrition.com to supplement your workouts and nutrition. Use code EvolvedPodcast to get 10% off all weight train and athleticity gym gear and apparel. No matter what you need for your workouts, they have the gear to help you get it done. They have great clothes for the gym wear, for men and women. Visit weighttrain.com for all your gym gear needs. Last is not dead yet. Use code EvolvedPodcast to get 15% off all clothing and accessories. The goat shorts and shirts are some of the most comfortable clothing I've ever worn, and they have the coolest designs. However, their drops are only available in limited quantities, so get your favorites while you can, and be on the lookout for other drops you're stoked on. Visit notdeadyet.com for clothing to remind the world you are not dead yet. Now, back to the show. Do you still do any type of running, biking, or swimming, like to keep up with that?
Yeah. So,
even if you're not doing the full, distance that you would train for?
Yeah, I've been running. I haven't let that go. And I'm hoping, like this summer, I'm planning to swim again because I love swimming and I love water and working with water.
Where would you do your open water swims when you were training?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I trained, at the time, I went to Gold's Gym and just did like 1,000 laps.
In the pool, yeah.
So many laps. And at some point, it was like, it reminds me of the scene in Forrest Gump where he starts to run and his braces just start falling off. Mm-hmm. It kind of just starts clicking after you do 1,000 laps.
How are you tracking that? Do you have a little watch that you use?
I have a Garmin.
Okay.
And it tracks, so I did heart rate monitoring training, which I thought was really important because my father's heart attack, just to be safe, do the heart rate monitoring. And that's
Smart.
A wonderful way for any person to stay safe when they're doing any training. And it literally just straps around your ribs. It's powered by a lithium battery. And I just learned how to calm my heart down when I see it. Just I can throw myself into a breathing pattern that slows me down.
While you're swimming?
Oh no, just in general.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But swimming as a cross-functional sport or activity really is powerful. It's wonderful to develop the core, to help your breathing. I'm planning to do it this summer again.
Yeah. Well, I asked because I did my first triathlon in April, and it was a half sprint. So it was a very short triathlon, but I really want to do more. I want to do a full sprint, an Olympic, and eventually work my way up to half Ironman and a full Ironman. But I haven't swam really in years, and before the race, I didn't do any swim training at all. So I went in cold, and it was tough. I did a combination of freestyle and backstroke to get through it, and I definitely know I need to do more swim training. I've been a runner and cyclist for many years now, but like the swim is my weak part.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what the human body can do when there's a desire there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you can totally do it, Joe. I mean, Lake Monticello, man, was my first, and I think it's a wonderful terrain.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a beautiful Lake Monticello, and then they have sprints and Olympics. You could probably jump on an Olympic.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm looking to do next, for sure. But is that in Charlottesville?
In Monticello, and so that's about 30 minutes outside of Charlottesville towards us, so east.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you would like it, I think.
How old were you when you did that one?
I did that one with my dad. I was 26.
Wow, that's cool. Was he into triathlons when you were younger?
No, we decided to do it. We decided to commit to training for our first triathlon together on my birthday, because we were both kind of going through some hard emotional times, and we thought, why not do this together?
Yeah.
And he was 54 at the time. I was 26, and he was doing physical checkups, making sure he was okay, because we were doing like a self program, self trained program.
Yeah.
He loved it. I remember the day after we met up and we started talking about bikes and what kind of next cool bike, because we showed up with like cruiser bikes and everyone else has these paper thin bikes.
Yeah.
But we got through it, even though we were the last ones.
There was someone riding a cruiser bike, the triathlon that I did too. It was, a lot of people's first triathlon that day. But it was really cool, and I definitely get why that community is so, vibrant and popular. It's very supportive, very positive, all things that I love. And I've found that to be true in the cycling community as well as the running community. So you just combine it all into one. But I know Dave has been getting into biking a lot lately. Has he tried to get you out on some bike rides?
It's funny. I actually got him on the bike ride.
Oh, okay, nice.
But he's gotten so much stronger from doing the bikes as part of his training. Now I'm trying to get him in the pool to swim and learn. Sorry, I said that. But yeah, I just think that the swimming part it's so overlooked.
Yeah.
But I think it is the adhesion to both cycling and running.
How so?
Well, I think that the swimming part strengthens the muscles, the core, the back, most importantly, the respiratory, because you start to learn when you're freestyling, your breathing is a lot more controlled and different from your normal breathing of running and cycling. But it's like for me, if I'm riding for a full day, I have to do something else. I have to when I was training for triathlon, I had to dance.
When you say you had to dance, what does that look like? Like, what kind of dancing would you be doing?
When I was training, I did the pole dance.
Okay.
To help me kind of balance out my life. That's what I feel like swimming does for running and with cycling, is it kind of brings it all together. And it trims, it kind of fits, makes your body more, it makes your body faster, because you start to feel and look like trimmed.
Right. Plus, you can breathe more efficiently while you're running and riding your bike too, since you're definitely at a reduced oxygen threshold from swimming. You are holding your breath more, trying not to drown.
Precisely. And there's a lot of swimming exercises. Like I have a buoy, I've got little paddles. I used to train without wetsuits. Like I showed up to one of my races that was wetsuit friendly, and everyone had a wetsuit because it was like 40 degrees outside and the water was 65. But I wanted to see how deep I can go, so I came out without a wetsuit.
Yeah, my first try race, I also did it without a wetsuit. I didn't find out until the day before that I could wear a wetsuit, but I don't have one. So I decided, we're doing it anyways. It was really cold. One guy started the race and then backed out. Like he decided it was too cold for him. But yeah, just, got in there and realized like that's what it is today,
Yeah, I feel like that's the mantra of a triathlete or any athlete. It sucks, but let's keep going.
Yeah, exactly. When I did my first 100-kilometer bike ride, that's kind of how I felt on parts of the trail, just because it was a little hilly. We rode out to like past Ashland, and then back into the city. It was like it's called the Up North Three Sisters climb with Outpost. That was in February, I think. But doing that helped me prepare for doing my first 100-mile bike ride, which felt a lot easier in comparison to that, because it was on the Capitol Trail. It was a lot flatter than that route, and even though it was more mileage, my body had adapted to that mileage.
And I feel like triathlon is the sport where you can experience firsthand how quickly your body and mind evolve as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any plans to do any other races after you get through this phase of launching your book?
So because I can't stay fixed on one thing, I have told Dave and myself that we're gonna go learn how to surf.
Oh, cool.
I want to surf, and I want to surf well.
Yeah.
So we were talking about doing something like that before the book comes out, is take a few months and go and specifically surf.
Do you have any idea where you want to go to learn to surf?
So I've been to Australia. I've been to Bondi Beach, which is close. It's nearby Sydney. Personally, I have also been to Costa Rica. I lean towards Costa Rica, but I'm also open to where life takes me.
I recently had Liz Bowden on the podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but she told me about some time that she spent in Costa Rica, and I think today she posted about it on her Instagram as well. Just with extreme fondness, and my brother and his wife, they've been to Costa Rica and they love it, so it's definitely somewhere that I want to go at some point.
What about you? Do you hope to do any races soon, or what's next for you?
Yeah, right now, the podcast is my primary focus, but I would like to do more races too. I was looking at some races coming up this year. There is an Olympic triathlon in October. I believe that one is the Robius Landing Triathlon. So that one is likely, but I haven't registered for it yet. and I have it on my calendar to sign up for the 2024 Half Ironman in Roanoke. Also haven't registered for that one, but I need to get on that training plan like as soon as possible if I am going to do that.
What month is that?
It's
Fine.
June.
Oh, you have time.
Yeah. I wasn't able to do Monster Cross at Pocahontas State Park, which is a bike race. I wasn't able to do that this year, so I really want to do that next year. Be it like a 50-mile trail bike race. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe Dave will do that too.
Yeah, I would love to see Dave do a triathlon. I think he's getting there.
Hey, I mean, with enough support from you and like, you know, pushing him in that direction, I think he would be up for the challenge, you know, especially having, you know, done these Spartan races that he does. I'm sure he would be up for any sort of challenge you throw at him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, has he tried to get you to do a Spartan race with him?
Oh, I have.
You have?
Yeah, so Dave and I, we decided our adventure of the year in 2020, this is before the Western trip that we did. We did a 100-mile backpacking hike on the Appalachian Trail called the Wilderness Trail. It is the northernmost tip where the Appalachian Trail ends, and it is the most technical part of the Appalachian Trail, and it's highly sophisticated. Have I ever backpacked or hiked before? No. And that was an entirely new culture to submerge into. But we not only did it, we were planning to do it in 10 days, and we did it in 7 because we had to. We ran out of food.
Oh no.
And we were hiking with, I think it was at the last 3 days, like 700 calories between us.
Wow.
And doing 20 plus miles a day to try to make it to the other side.
Oh my gosh.
And then a week later was the first Spartan race that I did. In, where was it? I think it was in Gainesville, somewhere in Virginia. And then the following week was the Half Ironman in Wilmington.
That's a big month for you guys. Dang. So, like, how were you rationing your food, like, towards those, like, last, like, couple days?
So it's funny, we actually had planned everything really well in terms of calories, but our load was too heavy, and the first 30 miles going from south to north is the hardest, because there are rock scrambles, there were slippery areas, because we were there end of September, so it was already cold and snowing in some areas.
Wow.
And it was just grueling and miserable, and I just remember Dave, like one morning, because we used to wake up at 5 to try to get as much daylight to get as many miles as possible to get through. And Dave, like, I lost him somewhere, and I'm walking back. I'm like, where? He was sitting on a stump with his head in his palms and his hands, just staring like towards the mountains. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, just go, I'll catch up with you. But that adventure, it showed us a different part of ourselves that is really, we know that it's there, but we tasted the grit. We tasted it, and we were really hungry for it at the same time. But on the third day, it was just miserably hard, and I said, Dave, we need to let go of 5 pounds of food. So we left 5 pounds of food
on the trail.
For some other happy camper.
What did you leave behind?
Peanut butter.
No.
It was peanut butter, some like snacks, like nuts. It was just the worst thing that we could possibly leave behind. But it lessened our load,
Yeah.
and then we ended up with less on the back end. And I just remember the night before, like our last stretch, we were drinking salted water for dinner.
Oh my gosh.
That's all that we had.
Salt and water.
Salt and water.
Wow.
And then, and then Dave, the morning of I think the last day was like 6 miles, so it really wasn't that bad, but we were just starving.
I bet, yeah.
He had acid. He had acid on the trip. And
Really?
I didn't know it until...
When? The whole time?
No, he just had he had it.
Uh-huh.
And he said, maybe we should take it. Maybe we
On the last day?
Yeah, because we didn't have anything just to get through.
Uh-huh.
So the first time in my life, I took acid.
Wow. What was that experience like? Also, like, do you have any idea, like, what was the dosage?
Well, it's like minimal, but you're starving at the
Yeah,
same time.
you're hallucinating from the starvation at the same time. Right.
Well, I'll say this. If he had to take acid for some extreme reason like that, that was probably the best one to do it on, because on the end of the trail, there's something called the Rainbow Bridge.
Mm.
And it means that all that area, all of the leaves had a specific color arrangement.
Oh, cool.
And so you just go through the rainbow. And on this case, we were a little bit on some mild acid.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it really lightened up the atmosphere.
I bet it improved your mood, too, significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first time in my life, 31. Yeah, I have no shame in saying this story, because it actually helped us in this moment.
Arguably, it helped you, like, survive, that last day. I'm sure you guys were really struggling, not having any food.
Yeah, we were supporting each other without talking, like just picking each other's stuff up, and if someone dropped something, we just lifted each other up, and it was wonderful, and it was really hard at the same time.
Well, I know you and Dave are both very strong individuals, physically and mentally, but I'm sure having gone through that experience together and many of the other experiences that you guys have had together, you're much stronger together as a couple. And I know many people hearing this story would probably like gawk in amazement, like, to be thinking like, could they do that with their significant other? And most people would probably say no.
Our shared memories, our guilty and moral food is Milky Ways. And no matter how bad it was, like we had come down to 2 little Milky Ways, and we just promised each other that at the end of the day we'll end it with a Milky Way, and we kept to it.
Nice.
Like we shared it one, like you have a bite and I have a bite, and good night. And in the tents we were cramping so bad, so we would work with each other. Like I would really work his body, his legs, his arms and back, and he would do the same with me. And the reason for that is we have such minimal time for recovery, that we have to actively engage with like physically repairing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it was helpful to have another person doing that, because there's some areas that I'm so tired and I can't get to that he
Sure.
could,
Yeah.
So we were a team. And would we do it again? Probably not that part.
Yeah.
But maybe another part of the Appalachian Trail.
Right. So we're going to move towards wrapping up. Just have a few more questions for you that we like to ask as recurring segments on the podcast. So, starting with the big question, what is your why? I know I've heard Dave talk a lot about finding your why through his story work, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this at length as well. So, what would you say is your why for doing your writing and pursuing that career instead of the pharmaceutical industry? What would you say is your why for, doing these types of movement in your life, such as dancing or triathlon, just running? Even what does that bring to you, and how do you hope to share it with other people?
The why is such an important element to anything that we do because it defines intention, defines our will, and it defines where we come from and where we want to come from. I've had so many thoughts on the why, and it's not so one-dimensional. For me, my why constantly evolves. And I like it that way. I like that my why isn't fixed, and that I continue to refine why I do things and how I do them. For me, my why is to continually evolve so that I can be a better version of myself each day, so that I can give back more and more to humanity. I am an engaged participant. And if I settle, and I won't, but if I do settle on a period, like a why, this is my why for, this is my why, I just find myself deeply perplexed with even that answer, because it's just so deep. It's so deep, man.
It really is, yeah.
And I love, I hope, I find beauty in engaging in this conversation with movement, with sound, with light, with knowledge, with information, with learning about others. I have many whys.
As one should, I don't think there's one answer for everything. There's, like you said, one answer for different chapters of our life, different seasons of our life, and different pursuits. So I think you summed it up perfectly. As perfect as one could be for this particular episode. Next is our PMA Warrior of the Week. Who is someone who inspires you to keep a positive mindset?
And it has to be a person?
I don't know. Tell me more.
It has to be a human being.
It could be an animal, I suppose. What did you have in mind?
The thing that really moves me, I go by movement, like within movement, because I feel the energy, and I feel how my body responds to positivity and negativity. Yeah. And both are equally important.
Right. That polarity we talked about.
Yeah. I had it. It was, or what is? Maybe the question for me is what is.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, to me, the most tangible answer is frequency. What is the thing that I find the most can be the most positive thing, and it's frequency. And the way I feel frequency is when I engage with another energy, such as yours. For example, like I feel like we're connecting right now, and it brings me joy. It brings me it like checks off, like, yes, we're in this together. You know, even though we're not family or we don't live together, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we have come together to talk about evolution, positivity, development, and it's a frequency.
Yeah.
And this type of frequency, when someone will hear it, is going to be touched by it. And that movement within is going to hopefully help someone or inspire someone to do the same.
Love that. Makes me think about matter and energy. You know, all matter is made up of energy, and all energy vibrates and resonates and has different frequencies, like you spoke to. And, you know, whether you're speaking of a person or an object or an animal, you know, all of those things have energy and thereby have frequency. Even if it's intangible, it can have a frequency. The sound waves coming out of our voices have a frequency. And going into your ears while you're listening to this podcast, that has a frequency.
One thing
I appreciate that.
Yeah. One thing that I find fascinating about dolphins is they're excellent midwives. If a woman is comfortable and courageous enough to have their birth in water with dolphins, what the dolphin will do is circle around the woman so that she's completely in the center to fend off any other organisms to come near her.
Is that something you've thought about doing, perhaps? That's cool. Yeah, that'd be something. That'd be like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Before we wrap up, we have our mindset moment. What is a quote, tip, or phrase that you use to help you stay positive in difficult circumstances?
The biggest war of all time is the war against our imagination.
What's that from?
It's by Deprima. She is a poet and a writer. I could get you the exact literature text that I got that from, but that's my favorite quote.
Do you remember where you heard it for the first time?
I heard it from my editor, Richard Grossinger.
Could you say it one more time?
The biggest war is the war against our imagination.
Yeah. Is that part of the reason why you decided to take a break from social media?
Yeah. Yes, and I wanted to give my evolution a chance. A chance that is fair, drawing from pure inspiration. And I wanted to see how I can go without any narratives, or, how would my focus, how would my frame look like if I eliminated that part of my life?
Yeah. And I know you still have a online presence, you still have your website and your Instagram page, but you're not using it actively, people can find you and email you, so you're still building that brand, and I'm sure you'll have other people like managing that stuff for you when you're promoting your book, but you can be much more intentional with how you're using that and how it's working for you.
Thank you. That's precisely my outlook, is when I have a publication date, which I might be knowing in September, October, then I will be back to talk about my book on the webs.
Cool. Welcome back to Evolve Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fitzpatrick, and today we have Ruslana back with us to talk more about her life updates since we recorded her last episode this past summer. So Ruslana, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Joe.
Good to have you.
Thank you for having me back. And I have to include, I'm very impressed with all of your new cameras and mics. I feel that you're ready to advance to your own recording studio.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's something we'll make happen in season 3. I've actually been talking to someone about getting that set up.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's with this company called Cabin in the Woods. James, I believe his name is. He plays in the band Dark Waters. They're based here in Richmond, so hopefully we can make that happen.
Yeah, well, I'm very impressed, and congratulations.
Cool, thanks. And also congratulations to you. I know
Thank
you and your partner Dave got engaged this past November, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. We were navigating through Europe and we were in Santorini when he asked the question. We were on this beautiful hike from Fiera to Ia, and we found ourselves on the side of a volcano.
Beautiful.
Overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And it was so profound and surreal that when I'm remembering it, it felt like a really quick moment, but a very deep one.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave said, I said, this is so beautiful, and I love, how everything's going, and he got down on one knee and he said, would you like to do this forever? And my response was, hell yeah.
Great response.
Yeah, so we were really happy to have that moment in Greece together.
It's probably good that he didn't propose on that hike when you guys were almost starving to death, right? And he chose that moment. It sounds like a really special moment for you guys. Yeah. Yeah,
it was. We took a 1-month expedition around the Mediterranean, and that was our first stop. We didn't want to. We told our families that night, but we wanted to really capture that moment. Mm-hmm. So we decided to enjoy the following 3 weeks of our time together and engagement, and then we announced it when we came back home.
Awesome. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
And I know you and Dave have been longtime partners for a while, and I'm sure you have a lot to look forward to with that engagement. Have you thought about setting a date for a wedding, or how you want to celebrate that?
My dream is for it to be a small, intimate celebration near the water. Mm-hmm. Dave wants multitudes of people, so
not surprising.
Yeah, that's Dave and his personality, and one that I love very much and complements mine. But we haven't set a date yet, but I imagine it would. We hope to get married in the next 2 years.
Awesome. And I know you've also had other achievements in your career, including an article published in Psychology Today. Can you talk about that?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am really pleased to have shared an article on Psychology Today about the impact, the effects of sound frequency on our perceptivity, on our ability to be aware of synchronicity. Mm-hmm. Synchronicity was defined by Carl Jung in his life work in 1950s. Synchronicity is the mere coincidence of two unrelated events but have meaning. And the article that is on Psychology Today is a collaboration between myself and Dr. Bernard Bateman, who is a psychiatrist, on this exploration of sound frequency and how it is a mode to entrain the brain wavelengths in our mind to be able to recognize meaning. And it is our vision and goal that synchronicity can connect people on a soul and deep level.
I thought that was really interesting to hear about, since we had talked about frequency in our last conversation. We didn't really get into synchronicity that much, but I think we touched on it indirectly, in terms of how we were interacting with each other and how our energies and vibrations that come out of our voices and our actions, affect other people.
Absolutely. And there has been numerous relevant neurophysiological studies that show the profound and confounding relationship between our conscious and subconscious experiencing mirroring the wavelengths in our mind. Of course, there are other important aspects that include the aspects of the brain, but in terms of my research and how I am interested in kind of getting our brain rhythms in a certain state to affect the rest of our physiological rhythm is I believe it's a groundbreaking means to not only healing our subconscious traumatic experiences, but also the way we interface with our world. So energy, of course, I feel like we've been hitting the nail a million times now, that energy work is very real. But now what I'm very interested in is, how does sound play an instrumental role in this arena? Sound for the past 200 years has been used in the medical field, beginning with the stethoscope, and now acoustic sound and acoustic waves are the modality that a lot of scientists are looking at in transferring electrical impulses in our brain to sound and listening to how it can isolate what is normal and how to isolate what is a disbalance, which causes disease and illnesses. So there's been, for example, Stanford University has a number of research studies that show that already. Of course, there are other waves, electromagnetic waves and scalar waves, but that's a little bit beyond to the next conversation.
So besides your interests and awareness about sound frequency, what's your background with this field? Have you studied it, in the past? It sounds like you studied it extensively, but can you elaborate on that?
My background is in chemistry and biology. I have a master's in chemistry. When I was studying it, it was emphasized with clinical science. So my background I have a decade-long experience working with biopharmaceuticals,
right,
which I think we talked about last time. After I made the shift to begin the next corner of my research and endeavors, it was to study sound.
Okay.
So that was in 2022. So it's been 2 years that I've went into a deep dive with my own research. And in the last 2 years, it started with playing healing instruments. So I became more acquainted with sound healing. I started to facilitate sound healing classes. I'm building programs at several locations now. Recently, I opened for Joel Salatin at the Montpelier Health Exposition, which was 2 weeks ago. But it was during my research when I was writing my book that I realized there is an entire frontier of knowledge that's waiting to be explored using sound. And so diving into my book is how I began to become familiarized with other research practitioners and psychiatrists and other anthropologists in this arena.
Mm-hmm. So what does the role of sound frequency play in your book? Can you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So my book, which is going to be released in U.S. bookstores and online in January of 2025, is called Activating Our 12-Stranded DNA. And it's a really exciting time, because I really haven't been able to talk much about it until now.
You heard it here
on
first.
The Joe Fitzpatrick Show. The premise of the book explores what the complexity of the symmetry of our DNA. And I have accepted the double helix model, but I've also moved past it. So what I introduce is that our DNA has more of a dodecahedral configuration, which is a platonic solid. And while this model is very new and there's no scientific backing behind it, I do believe that our genetic build is a lot more complex than the double helix. And as more research studies are showing that we do have multiple strands of DNA, I do believe that the advancement in our future, in our meaning future generations, will show that we are beyond a double helix, and that it will reframe the healthcare industry, it'll reframe the pharmaceutical industry by far. But this is the first book of its territory, and it's exciting for that reason. But what I did to incorporate frequency is I sonified the dodecahedral model of the DNA that I speak of and write about into a harp. And I play the harp for water. So this is what I mean by using water as a platform. So Dr. Emoto is a well-known book author and a water research scientist. He was not the first one to explore this method, but he did bring more awareness through his New York's best-selling book of how we're able to build a relationship with water. He started to isolate how water can create crystallized forms of different patterns and shapes based off of the vibration that it receives. It could be a message, I love you, I'm stressed, beauty. And each form that he shares with water is different, and it's also consistent. So there are other research scientists in this arena. Dr. Gerald Pollack, who is a university professor at the University of Washington. Veda Austin, also a well-known growing water researcher, now in New Zealand, are the pioneers of this method. And as a matter of fact, I took a workshop with Veda Austin, I think about a year and a half ago, to explore her method. But what I decided to do was to take the sonification frequencies that have been scaled to music tones and play them to water. Now, it's not so easy. You have to, in what I experienced, I realized I had to drop all of my construct around and recondition my relationship with water. I had to create a new pathway of respecting water for for me to see and for it to communicate.
I'm sure that must be challenging, especially since you've had, such a close personal relationship with water all your life, especially as a swimmer, and an active person. Would you say that has shaped your experience with it?
Very much so. And I realized recently how much water plays a significant role. I swim a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I also give lessons at Swim RVA. I listen to a lot of water music,
Really?
So the healing sounds of water. I go to water quite often. I'm
Mm-hmm.
lucky that Dave and I live next to Bryan Park, so I can go to water anytime.
Mm-hmm.
But water, I realized, has really shaped the way I respect life. Aside from the fact that we're at least 50% water made up, and
True.
this is the life-giving source of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to come to terms that water is its own being and exists not only as a need for human beings, but perhaps has a consciousness of its own, is intriguing.
Really? How so?
How does it have a consciousness of its own?
Yeah.
So that's the research study and theme that many research scientists are excited to show.
Mm-hmm.
Water shows capability. Water shows memory. Water shows different patterns of vibration when it's crystallized, when it's treated in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So one example of this that I show in my book through pictures, as a matter of fact, colored pictures, is when I asked water one day, without showing a picture of it, I asked water if it would be willing to show me what does a flower look like.
So, lay this out for me. What do you mean you asked water? What was happening at that time? Where were you? All that?
Well, I was at my home.
Uh-huh.
I have a glass petri dish, and I use filtered water, which some research scientists say it matters and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
I just took the approach of this is what I have,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to respect it. I'm going to energetically claim that water is its own being. So this is the construct that that I was referring to. I had to kind of break through that such a thing can even exist.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did, and my energy shifted, it's like the example that I can give to you is there's a certain unspoken means of seeing if a person is sad or happy,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're sitting there with no
Mhm.
expression on their face. You can pick up on it,
Sure.
right? Would
Yeah.
you agree with that?
Generally, yeah.
Well, I believe water can do the same based off of the vibration or intention. I use
Mhm.
that word reversibly,
Yeah.
of what's in our heart.
I relate to that. I think, food can have intention cooked into it. Like if the person, preparing a dish is happy or upset, or there's violence attached to it, in the case of animal agriculture, if the food is, gathered or produced inhumanely, like that intention goes into that food. And when people say something is cooked with love, you can sometimes taste it because there's that quality there. So I personally don't know how I feel about how that relates to water, but I definitely understand that with food at least. So I'm sure like the same concept applies there.
Right. You're speaking of an energetic transference.
Right.
And that's the same in my example. When I have decided that water is now going to be my best friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm open to its expression unconditionally, it might actually show me something really interesting and
Mm-hmm.
intriguing, right? And it does, and it did.
But what is the energy transference that's like causing that to take place?
Meaning, how do I isolate that energetic, the type of frequency that I'm having with water?
I guess so, yeah.
So that's something that I don't have the diagnostic tools to
Mm-hmm.
assess, nor does it exist currently
Right.
in our traditional book of science.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this research is so profound, because we are dancing, or all of these scientists are dancing around the same concept. Well, the ones that are interested in synchronicity and the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are interested in water consciousness, because this is the next level
Mm-hmm.
of our advancement in scientific innovation, is how do we measure these unexplainable events.
Have you shared any of your findings with your colleagues that you mentioned?
It's in my book.
Okay.
The
yeah.
pictures are in my book.
Right. So
Yeah.
they haven't received it yet, but I'm sure you've been talking with them about getting them a copy of your book and all that. So that's good. You also founded a research organization, so the research continues even though this book is done. Can you talk about that?
Sure, thank you. So I decided to create a nucleus for my exploration of this unique science,
Mm-hmm.
the things that the interests that are not currently being explored, but maybe are, just I'm not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So the name of my company is called Songbird Science. It is a startup that focuses on exploring the effects of sound frequency on our consciousness. There is an educational aspect of it that will be added later on, but for now there are two concurrent research studies that I'm working on currently. That is one will be that I'm actually seeking a cohort for, but it'll study the qualitative. It's a qualitative study. It's non-clinical, non-medical. It is simply an investigation of how sound healing can interplay with our ability to notice synchronicity. And then the other research study is going to, currently working with Richmond Water on it, is going to study the effects of sound frequency and its effects on the biochemicals in our water.
Talk more about that. What do you mean by that?
In our public water, no matter where you are, no matter what part of Richmond you're in, you should be able to navigate to your district's public water information, and learn about all of the chemicals that are in our water, like nitrates, for example. It is my goal, the research goal in this is to see how frequency can either increase or decrease the concentration of these chemicals. There are other studies that are comparable in this field, but most of them are in the eastern part of the world. The western part doesn't seem to really have a dominant interest in this.
Yeah, that's totally understandable based on, Western medicine's perspective on how things should be treated, whether that's human or environmental. How would that frequency be transmitted in theory? How would you do that?
It's a simple treatment of exposure to the water.
As far as like going to the source where like the water treatment plan is, that type of thing?
I would collect a sample. A sample would be given to me. And then I would have a metal plate, and it would receive the frequency through the metal plate for a certain period of times.
Okay. And I know that you are also presenting on your sound frequency work at the 30th Annual Science of Consciousness in University of Arizona this April.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Sure, thank you. So after my article was published on Psychology Today, it became apparent to me that this topic is in demand. People are interested in synchronicity more than I ever imagined. And the fact that frequency is so accessible, I think people are scared by the word frequency, honestly.
There might be a misconception about what it means, yeah.
I decided to explore this idea, and I wrote an abstract to create the study. The abstract that I'm presenting will be at the 30th biannual Science of Consciousness conference, which is essentially a world gathering of recognized practitioners, research scientists, and clinicians in the realms of anything that pertains to consciousness. So ontology of consciousness, phenomenology, I saw meditation. There's about 100 different topics or categories, but the area that I'm, again, going to be presenting is about synchronicity.
I think it would be really great to bring something like that to Richmond, whether it was at University of Richmond or VCU or anywhere else that would be willing to host it. I think that a lot of people in this area especially could gain a lot from learning more about consciousness and awareness and just ways to better yourself. I think the holistic health community in Richmond has been growing, and there would probably be a lot of interest in that.
That's a wonderful idea. Would you, if there was a way to do that and get sponsors, is that something you would want to attend and maybe air live?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be open to that. We could talk more about that.
Okay.
Also, before we wrap, I know Dave has decided to take on a 100-mile race, and he is very much part of your life, and I'm sure you're supporting him along that journey. So I was wondering if you could comment on your role in helping him achieve that goal.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so proud of Dave for a number of reasons. We're each other's support systems. He has been mine tremendously. The most important support system I have in the last 2.5 or so years. He has taken on a 100-mile run challenge, and this is his first one. And he's taking it very seriously.
Yeah.
In a number of ways that even he doesn't talk about. He is very dedicated, not just to physically do it, but to make sure that he is spiritually aligned with what he's doing, and he remembers why he's doing this, and that he does it in a sane way. He's mentally in check.
Yeah.
He has asked me to be his master crew or crew master, which, I'm going to be there with the rest of the team, helping him out. It's been so wonderful to see him grow and develop. He has grown a lot in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
of our relationship in his own ways. And it has not been easy. But I find that this is the place that we have to be, in that uncomfortable zone, to expand.
Very well said. And I know that you're a big part of his growth, and I'm sure you've helped push him in directions that he may be uncomfortable with, and really taking that spiritual component into consideration. I'm sure he really appreciates you helping him out with the spiritual component, because I know from doing endurance races, your mental state is so important when going into any type of, event like that, whether it's a marathon, half marathon, or anything beyond that. I know you guys are partners for life, and this is just another challenge for him to accomplish, and I'm sure he'll appreciate having you by his side through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so has he set the date for that run?
It's going to be, I think, June, end of June.
Okay.
Which is right around the corner.
Yeah, it'll be here before he knows it.
We're already, a week into February. Time's just bleeding away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As it does, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap?
I would like to mention that, first of all, thank you for having me on your show again. It's
of course
been so enchanting to kind of navigate the first part and then have a check-in to see how things have evolved, and they have. The second thing is, for Songbird Science, I am looking for a team of people who would be interested in getting involved. The people who I seek don't have to have a background in research or a background in chemistry or biology or statistics or anything that is overall comprehensive, but I am seeking people who have interest and who are passionate about collectively striving to further what we know about science, but with heart. That's the thing about science that I know. I respect every scientist out there, and I know that each heart's vibration is different. I am looking for out-of-box thinkers who aren't afraid, in this case, in this kind of heart vibration jargon that I'm talking about, who have courage in exploring the unknown. That's the second thing. The third thing is, I'll be back on social media. I've taken a break to focus on these other projects, but when I come back, I'll be talking more about my book then. And I have a number of sound healings that I do. I'm involved with the Art of Us in Carytown, the Cultural Arts Center in Montpelier, and then there's a fourth place that's in the making at MCV, actually. And that's the third. So the fourth thing is, I'm coming out with my very first soundtrack for sound healing.
Okay. When and where will that be released?
Well, we just finished it, and it's finally it's done with my sound producer. But we will have that available, I would imagine, within the next month or so, after we've come up with the design and all. So I always thought the design.
Are you planning on doing like a physical release, or will you be launching to streaming platforms? Both?
Both. It will be on Spotify and Apple iTunes. I'm really excited that it will be. It's my first production of sound in a healing capacity. So that's something I've been working on in the background too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ruslana. Great talking to you. Excited to hear about all you have coming up. Where can people connect with you one more time if they want to get involved with Songbird Sessions, or have you come speak at their event, anything like that?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show, Joe. It's always a pleasure. And maybe there will be a part 3 in your professional studio coming soon.
We'll see.
But with connecting with me, I'm email. I'm kind of old school. Email, snail mail. But email my last name followed by my first initial at gmail.com. Pretty easy.
All right. Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Evolved Podcast. Follow at evolvedpodcast.co on Instagram for weekly updates. Subscribe to Evolved Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and like your favorite episodes. Production and editing by Joe Fitzpatrick. Our theme music, Endless Cruise, is written and performed by Fingers, spelled F1NG3RS.